ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Let us bow down to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God Incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Today's subject, snap the shackles. Either to suffer or to be happy, everything lies in our own hands. If you know how to conduct your life in the righteous way, guided by the spiritual masters, you will not be suffering. On the other hand, you will be happy all the moment. You will be able to withstand the sufferings, and you will get special intellect to interpret the suffering so that you are not destroyed by the suffering. On the other hand, you become strong. So you develop that kind of feeling. Only you have to follow the instructions from the spiritual masters. And you should analyze thoroughly the reason for suffering, and everything becomes afterwards easy. So we are suffering because we are chained by our own senses. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Indriyasya indriyasyarthe ragadvesho vyavastitau tayorna vashamagachet tauhyasya paripanthinau. Remarkable. What a fine message Lord Krishna has given here. If you understand this particular verse, then you will never be dominated by your senses, who are your enemies. So Lord Krishna has pointed out here, the enemies are not outside, they are in you. They are well settled. They drag you every now and then towards the objects, and they pull you in different directions. They will never allow you to rest for a while. They constantly put you in some kind of tension. and you are just taken away by the senses. That means the senses are dominating over you. They are influencing you. All these things are happening because you are yielding to the insatiable desires. You can never satisfy the desire, and that is not the way. Desire will never bring you happiness at all. It makes a show of happiness. Really, it is suffering only. So, Lord Krishna has very clearly pointed out, these senses are your paripanthinam. They are your enemies. Once you are under the influence of these senses, you are pulled by attachment and aversion, likes and dislikes. Once you are caught in that net, you are forced to suffer, and you will not be able to understand your true divine nature. Consequently, you will be in bondage. You can never hope to get out of this crisis. So, the conclusion is that man suffers because of his own senses, because you don't know how to direct them properly, how to control them properly. You know only how to yield to the diversions. So naturally, life after life, birth after birth, you will be constantly in bondage. Every life you are born, you are in bondage only. Unless you work, unless you analyze properly, unless you practice the spiritual ideas, you cannot hope to get rid of bondage. As long as you are in bondage, as long as you are dominated by the senses, there will be always suffering. So you should know the facts clearly. Have open-mindedness. See the things clearly, understand them. Then you will get strength to practice, and you will be able to go forward in your spiritual journey. So, we have got senses, karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, mind, intellect, everyone is bouncing as it were on the soul, dragging and dragging. So each sense exerts tremendous pressure on the individual being, and what to speak of the combined attack of these senses. One sense is enough to totally distract you from the right direction. Of course, to give one example, every day you know how people are fascinated by television shows, particularly youngsters who think they can conquer the whole world, who think they can do anything, they are not to be bothered. That kind of audacity, arrogance are natural in the adolescent period. So they are literally mad. See how many people, how much time they devote on wasting in just seeing the television show. They even don't go to take food. In fact, one instance I wanted to tell you in this context that once I had gone to Canada, Toronto. There, they had a program, and I was to speak on message of Lord Krishna. I chanted Bhagavad Gita verses and then began to explain. Nearly 60 to 70 devotees were present. The hall was full and it was well organized. But the host was very sad. Very good house, big palatial building, well carpeted, well furnished, everything okay. But something is not okay. Everything is okay, but something is not okay. There was a line of sadness on the host. I just called him, why are you sad? How fortunate you are, you have arranged this program. We are dwelling on the message of Lord Krishna and we are chanting the verses of Bhagavad Gita, which are mantras, like mantras. They are all mystical. And all the people are alert to know the Lord's message. Why you seem to be a little unhappy, what's the reason? Then he said, Swamiji, I don't want to be unhappy, but I am unhappy because he began to tell. He had a daughter, only daughter. She is there in the home, but she is sitting in front of the TV. She doesn't want to go anywhere. She doesn't even go to take food. The mom has to bring the food near her mouth. Take, like that. Even then she refuses. I will take afterwards. Hours and hours sitting like, spending time like that, foolishly. Is it not ruining yourself? Who is to tell? And father is helpless, mom is helpless. And they are telling, we are helpless, Swamiji. What can we do? How can I make my child to come and hear this Gita talk? She was not a little girl. She was a graduate student. I am just giving the example. Looking, seeing, there is only one sense. Hearing, seeing. We have got 5 senses. Hearing, seeing, touching, all sorts of things. 5 indriyas, 5 karmendriyas, 5 jnanendriyas. So, how that girl is ruining herself just dwelling on the unreal things. She is interested in some games and whole time she is spending seeing the TV. She has no control. She got addiction, finished. Afterwards they will take drugs. Afterwards the reaction of the drugs will come. Side reactions of the drugs will come. The net result is the person will be suffering and suffering. So, you have to understand these things. You know, there are 5 elements well described in the Sanskrit. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. These are the 5 principal elements which drag the senses towards them, which are responsible for the play of this universe. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. Shabda, sound. How the hearing of the sound can distract you and you may lose your way of life. I am just giving one example for one of these, for all these elements, one by one. Generally, these are well exhibited in animals. For example, if you take deer in the forest, they move about very fast. They are very sensitive to hearing. Just a little sound here, there, they jump and run. So it is very easy for the hunter to trace the deer because it is running on account of the sound he created. That means it meets with death. Finally, the hunter will shoot the deer and he will take it home. Then, sparsha. The first one is shabda, sound. The next one is sparsha. That is the touch. It has got tremendous fascination and a kind of attraction. By the touch of the female, the male elephant gets excited. Elephant is given example for this sparsha. So in Karnataka state, from where I come, every year during Navaratri time, in the forest, they arrange a program. All the dignitaries of the country would come there, even foreigners also would come. They are invited to come to participate in that program. The program is catching the elephant. This is the program. Every year they catch. It is game for the people, but for the elephants, it's question of life and death. Now, what they do, they take the female elephant. Otherwise, it's not difficult to get the male one. So they have tamed the female elephant and they take it to the forest where the elephants are in large numbers. And they make special arrangements where the female elephant would stay there and eventually the male will come. And people would sit on the top of some distant place and they could see all the things happening, how the elephant comes and how it is caught. And it was a fact. The male elephant immediately comes there, attracted by the female one, and gets caught by the hunters. That's how they catch the elephants. So that is with regard to touch. By touch, one gets thrilled. So that's also a kind of distraction. Then comes drishya. For this also, there is an example, a famous example. The moth, it sees the flame, it's just simply attracted by that flame, it runs into it, it burns its wings, it dies there. It cannot keep quiet. It doesn't foresee the danger. Simply it runs and jumps into the fire. So that is the sight, drishya. Shabda, sparsha, drishya. That is the third one. The fourth one is ruchi. Of course, the drishya, it comes under rupa, the beautiful form. People get fascinated by the beauty of the body and get distracted. Then the ruchi means taste. How the taste also draws the person. Taste. Of course, you are all familiar with taste because we all eat, various dishes. And this particular example is given how the fish is drawn by the bait. It is because of the taste. Then the last one is Gandha. Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha. Gandha, that is a smell. When the flowers bloom, they spread out beautiful fragrance. So the bees are attracted towards the fragrance. They just come and jump into the flower, go deep into it, keep enjoying sucking the honey. But then what happens in that process, its legs got stuck up in the fluid as it sits on it. So, next day it is destroyed. So, you can see how each of these is distracting and responsible for the suffering. You can imagine the cumulative effect of all these evils, how it is dangerous and how it is impossible for the person to get out of this net, this shackle. So, unless you think clearly and remove the cause of the suffering, you can't get into spiritual realm. That means to say, what is the meaning of going towards the senses? What is the meaning of senses being dominated? Senses dominate the soul. That means you become totally involved in the world and worldly things and worldly activities. Anything that is worldly. You are not interested in anything other than that. You come to that state. So that means you are firmly in bondage. You love to be there. You love to be in bondage. Until you understand you are in bondage, you think you are okay, but really speaking, you are not okay. There is still a way out. That is, as Sri Ramakrishna tells in the Gospel, a boat may float, but care should be taken to see that water does not get into the boat through any hole. So if you are little intelligent and tactful in conducting your life, you will be able to free yourself from the shackles. In another verse, Lord Krishna very clearly states, who are responsible for dragging the soul to suffering? He says in the chapter 16, Trividham narakasyedam dvaram nashanamatmanaha kamaha krodhastatha lobhas tasmad etatrayan tyajet. So he has clearly pointed out here, everything is very clear. Only we have to understand and try to live practical life. Lord Krishna says here, what are the gateways to suffering? Naraka means suffering or hell, whatever you may call. Intense suffering is called hell. Unbearable suffering. Terminal diseases. Tremendous financial crisis. Surrounded by horrible enemies, all sorts of suffering. They all classified as hell, life in the hell. So, what are the gateways to the suffering? The first one is kama, that is the indulging desire, doing beyond the limits. Just as just now we referred to 5 senses and Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. Even one of them is enough to destroy. We are having all the 5 in us, and how we are in great danger all the time. So, if you are not careful, if you indulge yourself in the desires, that will cause you suffering. They put it as, they call it as lust, which is very dangerous. When you go beyond a certain limit, you destroy yourself. The next one is anger. How under the influence of anger, people commit all sorts of crimes, brutal crimes, and how they cause suffering. And the third one is greed. So these 3 are diagnosed, responsible for the suffering of man. So the first one, what I call lust, it means craving for all sorts of sensual gratification. But you can never be gratified. That's the truth. But you keep on trying to gratify yourself, and you will be lost. For example, lust for money. You are not satisfied with getting $100,000 per year. You want still more. 200,000, little more. 300, little more. Goes to infinity. There is no end. Even you might have become richest person, even then you want to earn more. That is called the lust for money. You are not satiated. You want more and more, more and more, more and more. So lust for money, lust for power, lust for name, lust for fame, lust for position. Anything that you do excessively, it comes under this classification. So, if anything comes in your way of gratifying your senses, you become angry. So anger, it comes to play its part. It is the offspring of lust. Anybody coming in your way, you feel upset, you get disturbed, you will take revenge. That is how the anger initiates you to do brutal crimes. So, but then, as I said, a person cannot be satisfied. He wants more and more. That means he becomes greedy. How he is leading himself to all these binding forces. These are the shackles. Kama, Krodha, Lobha. These are the shackles which we should get rid of. So, you should try to understand what is conducive to your development, then accordingly you must take steps. You must rectify them, not simply worrying over them. Not simply telling, my samskaras are like that, what can I do? What do you mean by that? You have to fight your samskaras. That's why you have been given this birth. You have to fight. I have no strength. Get strength. That's the point. So, you have to be up and doing. You have to do, you have to act. You know how to act, but you know how to act in bad ways. But you must know how to act in good ways, then you will be able to overcome all this suffering. So, one must aspire to know the truth. It is very subtle sometimes. God is very difficult to know, but we can easily know what is not God. That's why even when scripture tries to define the Supreme Brahman, it cannot be described, But the truth is there, it has to be experienced, you can't describe it. So, they do it in a negative way. They use negative language, that is, they use neti neti, not this, not this. Brahman is not this, Brahman is not that. That is, it is always easier to know what is not true first. Sri Ramakrishna tells again in the Gospel we see, when a person practices the discipline of neti neti, then finally he arrives at the truth, which is verily Brahman. To explain this, he gives an example. He takes the example of the king. The king dwells in the inmost apartment of the palace. It has got 7 gates. A visitor comes there. A visitor. He wanted to see the king. He comes to the first gate. Even the first gate itself is very glorious, because his palace means all the things around look very grand. So a visitor, how does he know? Visitor, how does he know? Who is who, what is what? So there is a person sitting there, maybe some officer belonging to king's apartment, but he is well dressed and he is surrounded by so many people, and there is a lot of grandeur and pomp. And this visitor has come with his friend, and the visitor is asking him, because he does not know, he is a villager. Because for the first time he is seeing a person well dressed and sitting and surrounded by so many people, he thought he might be the king. So he asked his friend, he is whispering, is he the king? No, no, said his friend. Let us go further. Then they entered the second gate, third gate. In every gate, he is seeing more and more grandeur, more and more pomp. And every time he is restless, he is asking the question, is he the king? Is he the king? Like that. So, finally, he comes to the 7th gate, where the actually king sits there. When he reached the 7th gate, when he entered the gate, he stopped asking the question to his friend. He is just satisfied by seeing. No explanation is required. Nobody need to tell that he is the king. When he saw, he became speechless. When he saw the person in the seventh gate with immeasurable glory, he understood, yes, this is really the king. He didn't ask the question. He arrived at the truth. So first gate, not this. Second gate, not this. Third gate, not this. That is neti, neti. Not this, not this. Finally, it is. He arrived at the truth. So this analogy Sri Ramakrishna gives there. So, when you negate the things, you are going beyond the realm of Maya, the illusion, then you will come face to face with the truth. You become a good seeker once you know well the nature of the world. So, if you know it, well, you won't want it anymore. Because usually the world or nature tries to pull you down. It's quite hard to bring a rock up to the top of a hill. It is really very difficult. But to get it down needs only a small push. Just push it, the rock rolls down the hill. It will just keep rolling down. That is nature's tendency. The nature's tendency is to pull you down. You may say, God has created me and He has created the nature as well. Why should He create a nature that constantly pulls me down? Why should He create the senses? Why should we should be dominated by the senses? Why all these things should happen? Why? It is here that we see the great importance of human birth. In order to know why, you have given this opportunity of human birth. To find out the answer for why. Until its human birth, the soul passes through many, many lives with many, many bodies of lesser intelligence. Gradually, the intelligence evolves, it expands in every birth. They give an example. It is like a seed, slowly sending up its roots, sending small branches out, the opening up and unfolding, growing up. Every moment it is growing until it brings forth another seed. And as intelligence opens side by side, you see what happens? The free will developing. Free will. At the human level, free will is completely unfolded. That is, you have been raised to a height where you don't need any more help. You have been taught all that is to be taught in your previous births. You have been given all the experiences that nature could give you, from the small blade of grass to a unicellular animal and up and up. After achieving the human level, that cosmic intelligence or God says, okay, now I have taught you everything. I am going to test you now. During the whole year, your teachers teach you in the classroom. At the end of the year, they do some kind of test, so that you can go to next class. To see if you have grasped what they taught, they test you in the examination hall. So, human birth is the Lord's examination hall. He will test you through nature. He says, I have given you free will. It is easy to fall down, but I have taught you to climb. Let me see whether you are using your intelligence or not. I am not really working against you. I simply want to test your capacity. The entire world is acting like a snake. It just sneaks into your room and tempts you. Come on, have one more, a little more of this, a little more of that. See, don't you think I am nice and beautiful? Don't you think that you can buy so many things if you have a big pocket full of money? So, temptations multiply, all kinds of temptations come. The first lesson is to know. What is the first lesson? To know that everything is here to test you. You are in the examination hall, that you should not forget. Don't be deceived by the things. Pass the test. You don't need to hate the test or the examiner. Don't hate the examiner, but try to pass. Don't hate the world, but know it well and say, this is just trying to pull me down. Everything is tempting and testing you. So you must be careful. You must be vigilant. That's why the scriptures talk about the dark side of life as well as the light. At least we will know what is not good by knowing the gates to hell. We exercise our discrimination to choose the right path and go toward supreme goal. So, that's the way how we should understand and get control before we lose control about our senses. After a certain time, even if you want to control, you cannot do it. So when you have the capacity to do it, you are not doing it. That's the sad part of it. When you are young, energetic, you can do many things, you can achieve many things. But you are not aspiring in the way you should, because you are just dragged by the senses towards involving yourself in the world. So naturally, it causes tremendous suffering. And of course, there are many instances to know how true it is. Why we have to study the cases? Study case. Why should you study the case? Because when you study the case, you will know, yes, it's a fact. I should not be drawn into the trap. So, in order to learn the lesson, study the case and become alert. So that you need not have to go into the gate of the hell And then afterwards, what is the use of complaining? I am suffering, I am suffering. You have to suffer. Why did you enter the gate? You can't say I didn't know, because you knew it. You know the cases, how many cases they are suffering on account of what reasons, you know it. Knowing that, where did you go? Then why do you complain? That's the point. So, in order to impress upon you, I am giving the study cases so that all of you here will not enter into the gates of the hell. That is the reason. That's why Lord Krishna says very clearly, the Narakadwaras, they are very prominent gates. They are not small gates. Very prominent. You can see, you know there is danger. That means you must use your intellect. You should not get into that gate of suffering. It draws you, it attracts you in so many ways. It deceives you. That is its nature. But if you fall into that attraction, you will suffer finally. In the first case I am taking, of course these are all known examples. All of you who have studied scriptures, they are well aware of the fact. But I give just to pinpoint the case I am telling. You know, you have studied the story of Ramayana. It's a great story. Wicked person, most wicked person, we should say. What is his wickedness? His wickedness was he is intolerably lusty person. And he was Ravan, his name was Ravan. He had so much of lust in him, it could never be satisfied. He would be always running after women. So he was fascinated by the beauty of Sita, the wife of Sri Ramchandra, and he just came in the disguise of a mendicant and just abducted her. And finally it led to the war. Of course, there were many good ministers who warned him not to do that, to return back. Sri Ramachandra was not an ordinary human being. He was God himself, full of compassion and forgiveness. Even now you go to him, return Janaki. He will excuse you and all the people will be saved. But he was arrogant and he thought he cannot be conquered by anybody. He had that arrogance of power, arrogance. Because he had received so many boons by doing tapas, and he conquered some of the devatas in the heavens, so he thought he cannot be conquered by anyone, and who is God? He himself is God. Like that he began to talk about. So Sri Ramchandra had to come to tell him, you are not the God. So anyway, his own brother, Ravana's brother, Vibhishan, he advised him very sincerely. But Ravan scolded him and insulted him, hurt him. So Vibhishana had to go away. And Vibhishana, in course of warning, he told him, you see, on account of your wicked action, all the people of the country would suffer. I can understand if you alone are dying. On account of you, all the people will die. It became a fact. The whole Rakshasa race was to be wiped out because Ravan engaged them in fighting all the demons in his place. Anyway, there's another story in Mahabharata. That's also a very famous story. If you have not read it, you please see there's a serial, TV serial of this Mahabharata, very nicely done. There the story comes, the Pandavas were in disguise, and Draupadi, most beautiful woman, she was helping in the inner apartment, and there was a person, a prince, his name was Kichak. One day he came to see and this lady, and he was so fascinated, and he was forcing her to come to him. And because of that evil quality of lust, he was to be killed by Bhima, who was also working there. And there is another story also, which is also well known. A great king, Nahush Chakravarti, a great emperor, who became the Indra of heavens on account of the meritorious actions he did when he was on this earth. But again he was fascinated by seeing the beauty of a lady who was married to the king of the heavens. And so he lost all his thinking faculty. He became very insulting person. He would insult all the people, and he lost the power of discrimination. He insulted the rishis, and he wanted the rishis to drag his chariot to the place where that lady lives. So on the story goes. Finally, because of this evil ambition, he lost all the merit to stay in the heavens, and he was forced to become a python, a dreadful snake in the forest. Anyway, the story goes like that. So, the thing is, these are all test cases. There are so many cases which you become aware of them. There are plenty of these cases which you see every day in the newspaper. That only shows you have to control yourself properly before it is too late. So, there is no point in simply telling, my nature is like that, what can I do? No, you can change the nature. You can do anything. Everything is in your hands. That's why we always keep telling that you are the master of your own destiny. Uddhared atmanatmanam atmanam avasadayet. You have to rise yourself. So, all the teachers have taught you the lesson, have given you the lessons, and they have given you the opportunity, but you have to act upon yourself. If the bad propensities are there, you have to get rid of the bad propensities. You have to find out some methods how you can get rid of that. So that is the way to avoid entering into the gates. Of course, by the impulse of anger, how people commit all sorts of things. Afterwards, even if they repent, it has no value. Once the damage is done, you have to reap the consequence of it. May not be necessarily in this very life. In your next life, you may reap the consequence of what you had done in the past. Because the Lord, the divine power is there, who is the distributor of the merits. Everything, whatever we have done, good or bad, will have its results. So we have to experience those things, good or bad. Happiness and misery, they all come on account of our own actions, good or bad. So, it's very important to see how these things are dangerous and how to avoid them. And regarding the third gate to hell, that is Lobha, and that also destroys knowledge and wisdom. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the mind is like a needle covered with mud. God is like a magnet. The needle cannot be united with the magnet unless it is free from mud. What is the mud covering the mind? Sri Ramakrishna explains it very nicely. It is lust, anger and greed. These are the evil tendencies that are acting like mud. They have to be removed. How? Through holy association, through prayers, through selfless activities, through whatever actions helpful for removing these bad propensities, you should follow them. So, greed is compared to a wolf. Cheating and cunningness are all the offsprings of greed. A greedy man is never contented. He is cruel, he is brutal. Though he may talk outwardly very nicely, but he is very dangerous. And again, you got a lot of instances for this also. Duryodhana, another famous character in Mahabharata, how he was greedy. And if you study his character, you will understand. And in the Mahabharata itself, there is a story how greed destroyed a person. There was a farmer, by his name was Haridatta. He didn't have much land to cultivate. So, whatever little he had, he has to depend on that. He was greatly worried. He was a family man. As usual, he went to his field. He worked very hard. Then he slept under a tree. When he woke up, he saw a serpent coming out of its hole and playing there. This farmer thought, probably this serpent may be the goddess of this place. Since I have not given any attention to this serpent, so I am suffering. So what he did was, he brought little milk and placed in front of the hole where snake used to live, and then he went back home. Next day he came, he saw the milk was drunk by the snake, but there was a gold coin. He was surprised to see that. And so he again brought the milk, next day also he kept. So every day he would bring the milk and he would get the gold coin. So he became prosperous and he became very happy. One day he had to go to some other place on some business. Then he told his son to keep the milk as usual near the hole. And the boy also did the same thing and he also got the gold coin. Then an evil thought came to him. He became greedy. See, I am getting gold coin every day. That means there must be a lot of gold coins under this hole, anthill. It's a big anthill, you know. There must be a lot of gold. So, why not I kill this serpent and take away all the gold instead of taking one gold every day? Take away the whole thing. He became so greedy. So what he did was, next day he brought the milk, no doubt, but along with the milk he brought a stick also. He had to kill the snake. And she began to hit the snake with the stick when it was drinking the milk. Somehow it missed the target. The serpent became angry. It bit the boy, and the boy dropped dead on account of the poison. See how, even though he was getting everyday gold coin, because of his greediness he was destroyed. So that is lobha. Anyway, these are all instances to point out how it causes ruin. Be watchful, alert, and conduct your life righteously. That's important. Whatever religion you may follow, that is immaterial. Whether you are Jewish, whether you are Christian, whether you are Muslim, whether you are Hindu, it is immaterial. What is needed is, take the principle, live the life. Live honestly, sincerely. Do what best you can do to the society. That's all that is needed. Then you will see how you get tremendous happiness and joy, which cannot be compared with the happiness and joy you derive from your senses. Thank you. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunakto Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. May the Divine Spirit protect us, guide us, give us strength and right understanding. May we not hate one another. May love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. May the Divine Lord protect us. May He nourish us. May we work in harmony with great vigor. May our study be illuminating and fruitful. May we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.